Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you are doing well. Today we are going to talk about the history of the Philippine educational system. Let us also see how the nature and the character of the Philippine society are reflected in the education process and different periods of Philippine history. After watching this video, I have a question. You will be able to trace the history of Philippine educational system. We talk about the educational system. Just remember this sociological concept focuses on the lesson that education is the function of society and as such what are two schools arise from the nature and character of society itself. What society considered important of what school teach. Let's start with the education, the pre-colonial period. Education during the pre-colonial period, education was informal and uncentralized. Fathers taught their sons how to look for food and other means of livelihood. Mothers taught their girls to do the household chores. This education basically prepared their children to become good husbands and wives. Children provided more vocational training, but lesser academics. Teachers were tribal tutors, babaylan or katalunan. Next is education during the Spanish era. Education was formal and organized. It was authoritarian in nature. Tribal tutors of the pre-Spanish period were replaced by Spanish missionaries. Pupils attended formal schooling in the parochial school. Structure was religion-oriented. Christian doctrines, sacred songs, and music and prayers were taught because they were required for confession and communion. There was a separate school for boys and girls. Wealthy Filipinos or ilustrados were accommodated in the school. Next, we have the educational degree of 1863. This law gave Filipinos a complete system of education from elementary to collegiate level. The law provided for the establishment for the elementary school in all municipalities and the country. All taught religion was the core of the curriculum. The curriculum included subjects reading, writing, arithmetic, history, Christian doctrine, Spanish language, vocal music, agriculture for the boys, and needlework for the girls. Attendance in school was compulsory between the ages of 7 and 12. Now let's move on to the education during the American regime 1898 to 1946. The Americans promoted democratic ideas and the democratic way of life. The schools maintained by the Spaniards for more than 3 centuries were closed but very often on August 29, 1898 by the Secretary of the Interior. A system of free and compulsory elementary education was established by the Malolos Constitution. In May 1989, the first American school was established on Corregidor, and shortly after the capture of Manila in 1899, 7 schools were opened in the city. Training was done through the schools, both public and secular, manned by chaplains and military officers of the U.S. Army. Thomas Sites arrived in the Philippines in August 23, 1901. The University of the Philippines was founded in 1908, was the first state school of university scholars in 1908. The Department of Public Institutions set up a three-level school system. The first level considered the 4 years primary and 3 years intermediate or 7-year elementary curriculum. The second level was a 4-year junior high college and later a 4-year program. Go to the Commonwealth period 1935 until 1942. Free education in public school was provided all over the country in accordance with the 1935 Constitution. Vocational education and some household activities like sewing, cooking, and farming were given importance. Education also emphasized nationalism so the students were taught about the life of the Filipino heroes. Vocational education and some household activities were also given importance. Good manners and disciplines were also taught to the students. The institution of private education was established in order to observe private schools. Formal adult education was also given. Executive Order Number 134 was designated by President Manuel L. Quezon designating ibabatay sa ang ating pambansang wika sa Tagalog as our national language. Executive Order Number 217, otherwise known as the Quezon Code of Ethics, was taught in schools. Executive Order Number 263 and required the teaching of the Filipino national language in the senior year of all high school and in all years in the normal schools. The Education Act of 1940 was approved by the Philippine Assembly on August 7, 1940, which provided for the following. First, reduction of the 7 years elementary course to 6 years. Second, fixing school entrance age at 7. Third, national support for elementary education. Fourth, compulsory attendance of primary children enrolled in grade 1. And lastly, adoption of double single sessions and the primary grade with one teacher, one class assignment of intermediate teachers. The Japanese occupation. Aims of education during Japanese occupation are the following. First, make the people understand the position of the Philippines as a member of the East Asia Confederacy. Second, eradication of the idea of reliance upon Western states, particularly the U.S. and Great Britain. Third, fostering a new Filipino culture. Fourth, elevating the moral of the people, giving up overemphasis of materialism. Fifth, diffusion of elementary education and promotion of vocational education. Sixth, striving for the diffusion of the Japanese language in the Philippines as the termination of the use of English in school. Seventh, developing in people the love of labor. Let's move on to the post-colonial Philippines. Education aimed at the full realization of the democratic ideas and way of life. The civil services immediately of teacher was made permanent pursuant to RA 1079 in June 15, 1954. The daily flag ceremony was made compulsory in all schools, including the singing of the national anthem, pursuant to RA 1265 approved on June 11, 1955. Curricular offerings in all schools, the life, the works of writing Jose Rizal, especially the Noli Me Tangere and El Poliestrismo, shall be included in all levels. Elementary education was nationalized and matriculation fee were abolished. Magna Carta for students, teachers was passed into law by virtue of RA 4670. Fundamental aims of education in the 1973 Constitution are foster love of country, teach the duties of citizenship, develop moral character, self-discipline, and scientific, technological, and vocational efficiency. Other development. Integration of values in all learning areas. Emphasis on mastery learning. YDT and CET introduced as a new courses media of instruction. Bilingual education policy mandates the use of English and Filipino separate as media of instruction and school. Education Act of 1982 created the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sport. NCEE National College Entrance Examination introduced Executive Order Number 117. President Corazon C. Aquino rewind Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports in 1890. 1980. Creation of the Board of Professional Teachers composed of 5 under PRC. Replacement of PBET Professional Board Exam of Teachers by LET Licensures Examination for Teachers. Transfer of authority of advertising the LET from CSC and DICS to the Board of Professional Teachers under PRC. Trifocalization of the education. The trifocal education system refused DEC's mandate to the basic education, which covers elementary, secondary, and non-formal education, including culture and sports. TESDA now administers the post-secondary middle level manpower training and development RE 7796 Technical Education Skills Development Act of 1994. CHID is responsible for higher education RE 7722 Higher Education Act of 1994. In August 2001, Republic Act 9155, otherwise called the Governance of Basic Education Act, was passed, transforming the name Department of Education, Culture and Sports to the Department of Education, and redefining the role of field officers, regional offices, division offices, district offices, and schools. RE 9115 provides the overall framework for school head improvement by strengthening their leadership roles and school-based management within the context of transparency and local accountability. The goal of basic education is to provide the school-age population and young adults with skills, knowledge, and values to becoming caring, self-reliant, productive, and patriotic citizens. Governance of Basic Education Act RE 9155 was passed, reminding the DECs to defeat and redefining the role of field offices, with including regional offices, division offices, district office, and schools. Value-based education is offered as a separate subject and in SEC and integrated in school subjects areas in both curricular implementation of new secondary education curriculum and SEC. RE 10157 January 20, 2012 Kindergarten Act, an act institutionalizing the kindergarten education into the basic education system. And of course, K-12 program RE 10533, also known May 15, 2013, the K-12 program covers the kindergarten and 12 years of basic education, 6 years of primary education, 4 years of junior high school, and 2 years of senior high school, to provide sufficient time for mastery of concepts and skills, develop lifelong learners, and prepare graduates for tertiary education, middle level skills development, employment, and entrepreneurship. So now the question is, why do you need to study? We have to bother with the educational goals of the past, which is past, and so we can no longer undo. Do you explain why the study of the history of education is very important and valuable? He gives 3 reasons. First, educational issues and problems are often rooted in the past. The studies of educational history can help us to understand and solve today's problems. Second, realistic effort to reform education begins with present conditions, which are a product of our past. By using our past, we can shape the future. And lastly, the study of education Fast provides a perspective that explains and illuminates our present activities as a teacher.